Lucasfilm, Kathleen Kennedy, Jon Favreau, and Dave Filoni. The Mandalorian and Baby Yoda. What in the world is going on? Seasons 1 and 2, fantastic. Season 3, not so much. The Book of Boba Fett, terrible. Andor, unseen. And the list goes on and on. So many want to know what's really happening over at Lucasfilm, over at Disney. And folks, after much investigating, talking with sources that we've come to trust, and you have as well, given the track record here on this channel, we're ready to break it down for you and tell you the truth of what has happened to the Mandoverse. Explaining entertainment, keeping you ahead of that culture curve. It's what we do each and every day right here on the WDW Pro channel. And today, well, we're getting you caught up on what's been going on behind the scenes over there at Lucasfilm in terms of Kathleen Kennedy, Jon Favreau, Dave Filoni, and all the drama that so few of us really understand. But behind the doors that George built, there has been a fervor of activity. Joining me to help discuss, explain, and understand everything going on, we have X-Wing, Coach from Echo Base Network, Lorne of ThatParkPlace.com, Valiant Renegade of Valiant Renegade, and Jonas J. Campbell of That Park Place as well. Gentlemen, we could use a few more ladies on the panel, but hey, we'll take what we can. Welcome aboard. Are we ready?
Let's do it.
Roll out.
All right.
This is the way.
This is the way. We'll say it 180 more times. All right, so before we get into this, folks, if you like content like this, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe, and you can stick it to the algorithms. When you click it, we're talking about that notification bell. Our information comes today from two individuals who either work in Lucasfilm or very closely with it, as well as a major source, that being the insider who has been famously named by Valiant Renegade as Deep Toy. Just to remind you, we have had major scoops on this channel in the past regarding the Rey movie, things going on with the Mandalorian. In the past, we had, not on this channel, but myself, the first exclusive on Luke appearing on the Mandalorian. And so we're going to continue that trend now, explaining what happened. We're going to dive straight in. As I am explaining all of this, understand that I am paraphrasing from a document that I've received, paraphrasing to protect the writing styles of the sources who have given this to us, as well as mixing what they have said so that it's difficult to track down which source said what. But all of it is important to protect those sources, and some of these original documents have been shared with some of the individuals on this panel so that they can see this is all legitimate. Here we go. Remember that Star Wars is focusing on the quadrant strategy, nonsense with respect to boys' intellectual properties. Young and old is good, especially in the case of Star Wars, where in the good old days, there was the key old demographic, old as in people who are older, which not only represented collectors, but also the pass it on factor in introducing their kids, as well as introducing casuals to the intellectual property. But Lucas, that's Lucasfilm, they have become so screwed up. They don't want to appeal to the 50-plus original consumers anymore. They want Star Wars to skew female like the rest of the Disney brands. So basically, the plan is to push away original fans who are, or should I say, would have been the most likely to introduce Star Wars to the kids, as well as encourage their kids to go deeper into the intellectual property. We're talking about books, games, merchandise, and more, than watching a few movies or episodes of a TV show with the old man. On the other hand, about a year ago, Hasbro and Disney merchandising combined together to fire an internal warning flare to Lucasfilm about an impending generational break in the franchise. That would mean a loss of evergreen status with their third parties. So, it is very possible at this point with the third season of The Mandalorian that they are attempting to resolve that issue, trying to hook the younger set by going more juvenile with the content of The Mandalorian. However, there is a problem there for Lucasfilm. It's not possible without boys. And to get boys, you need a cool male hero in the show. And an intro from dad to the intellectual property is a big plus. Dads need to show their sons Star Wars, or an uncle or a grandpa or whoever. The problem is that OG dads are bailing. That's what all of the internal statistics show. Dads are gone. or they're just passively hanging in there, but they no longer have true passion for the series. Now, that was not necessarily true just a few years ago when Luke Skywalker was seen as a major player in The Mandalorian, when, in fact, The Mandalorian was seen as a paternal figure, a tough and gritty hero, carrying around Baby Yoda, who then appealed to kids, but all of it was leading on to something big to do with Luke Skywalker, who had been done dirty with the sequel trilogy. With that storyline essentially abandoned now, dads have left the building. Gentlemen, we'll go around real quick. Give me your thoughts. We'll just go round table. We'll start with X-Wing. Give me what you think about that so far, and then we're going to get into the really spicy stuff.
Well, I mean, it makes sense, right? First and foremost, we all smelt something very different with Mandalorian Season 3. I think there was a reason why all of us older white dudes in baseball caps really liked Season 1 and 2 of The Mandalorian. And then Season 3 was a massive departure from that. But I've said for a very long time, and this goes for all nerd franchises out there, you have to appeal to your core audience. Who pays the bills? And in this case, a lot of times it's 25 to 65-year-old white dudes in baseball caps. That's who's buying your stuff. That's who's taking the kids to the park. That's who's buying all the collectibles, everything on cardback. These are the people that you need to sell your product to. And they're trying to make a change, but I'm going to tell you right now, a 9-year-old girl is not going to spend nearly as much money on Star Wars as I am. So make your choice, Disney.
Coach?
Like X-Wing, somebody who has a Star Wars centric or basically a Star Wars only channel, we see it all the time. People are leaving. More people are leaving than people joining on being interested in watching Star Wars. We see people say things like this: they can never take away the Star Wars that I love, the original trilogy, the prequel trilogy, but I'm not watching this. So that is absolutely the current state of the fandom. So I'm with you so far, Pro.
Lauren?
Continuing down this path is suicide of a franchise. I've never seen anything like it. They have failed a generational capture, and they seem to be proud of that fact. And the only thing you can conclude from this point is that somebody, I'll let you guess who, is trying to intentionally kill it.
Jonas, who do you think that is?
Star Wars.
You, Jonas?
Yes, Star Wars is dead. And actually, no, it's being smothered. It's being smothered with a pillow because, like all good corporate committees, they're taking something that works well in an environment and saying, well, it works well doing A, but what if we turned it into water skis? Water skis sell great. Kids love water skis.
But
well,
what
it's not
if
a water
it was
ski.
a girl?
Exactly. But what if Link was a girl? Right.
Yeah.
Or what if
Exactly.
Zelda was a girl is the joke. It's just painful to watch because one of the strongest themes of Star Wars is the multi-generational aspect of it. And then the prequels went even further down that road with telling the story of Anakin Skywalker and then making it all about that redemption, all about that father-son dynamic. And grown men look at Darth Vader a different way when they're looking at a son redeeming his father. And now they want to say, okay, now we have a girl killing her grandfather, or maybe weird clone grandfather thing robot that wants to destroy the universe. It doesn't. There's no appeal here. It's all art by committee, and they've given up on the fans. So let's give up on them.
Valiant?
Well, I think Lauren really hit the nail on the head there and kind of stole some of the thunder. I think it was brilliant. There's somebody there who is proud of doing what they're doing, and that's what it is. They are not concerned with bridging a generational divide. They are concerned with their own internal, personal, socio-political pride, and they want to walk away from the old fans. We've talked about that for years, right? We know what has come out of Lucasfilm. They didn't want to make movies for the 50-plus-something-year-olds. They didn't want to appease the old white men, quote-unquote, their words. The Force is female and all this kind of stuff. They are still desperately trying to build a new audience that frankly does not exist for them in that capacity. And that's not to say that women don't like Star Wars. There's a lot of women that love Star Wars. But as X-Wing also correctly pointed out, as it's all been stated here before, is that they are not going to engage from a financial perspective at the same rate and intensity that men will, especially older men who were brought into Star Wars either themselves originally in the 70s and the early 80s or as children during that time by their fathers. And that's what's missing. And Lucasfilm seems dead set against going back down that road. They're not concerned, I don't think, at this point, and they have not been, as been made evident by everything we've seen in the past several years. They're not concerned with commercial or financial viability for this franchise. And you juxtapose that to what we're seeing right now when you have a piece of IP who has a parent company that is very concerned with protecting the fiscal viability or the financial viability of that IP, like Nintendo right now is with Super Mario Brothers, for example, and what's coming out there and what they're going forward to. It's the complete opposite of what we're getting from Lucasfilm.
All right, so it's time to get into the very spicy. It's time to break some news, guys. So after the second season of The Mandalorian, things were very excited inside the fandom, inside general pop culture. The Mandalorian Season 2, following the finale where Luke came and took Grogu, that was the biggest streaming show out there, period, beating Netflix for the very first time for Disney+. Jon Favreau had really just taken Star Wars and proved that he had the correct vision. He had 2 highly successful seasons under his belt, now taken to the stratosphere. And that presented a real problem at Lucasfilm. You might think, well, no, that surely wasn't a problem because Lucasfilm should have been ecstatic. But many individuals at Lucasfilm were not. And I'm now going to tell you what happened following Season 2 in a particular meeting that involved 2 high-ranking individuals from Hasbro, one of the key partners with Disney, as well as a strategic consultant from another third party that we can't name at this time, as well as executives from Lucasfilm. Again, this following the Season 2 finale of The Mandalorian, where everybody is geared up and excited and ready to go. Here's what they were told. Lucasfilm was very clear to at least 2 partners who asked in the strategic meeting, including a consulting firm, Hasbro, and others with multiple Lucasfilm high-level executives. Lucasfilm was said clearly and plainly to everybody in the meeting that he would not be allowed to be a main character in any of the shows. He was at best allowed to be an occasional cameo. This is a quote from Lucasfilm. He is a cobwebbed character. He is a museum piece. He sells, but he is not a significant part of the matrix of new content going forward. So, if Grogu is going to stay with Luke, then you lose Grogu. He's out of sight, with the exception of some glancing exposure. And for everybody in that meeting, that would have been catastrophic. Remember, production had just ramped up on Grogu at the time. The retail pipeline was full with new coming and toolings being freshly authorized. So do you want to fight with Kennedy when she says no Luke? Favreau has control of his own shows, but Kennedy has say over new shows. If there's no Luke show, and there's no Ranger show where he's supposed to appear, then there's no Luke. And if there's no Luke, there's no Grogu if you force them together. What really stuck in the craw of the merchandising partners is a couple of sets actually did come out. They managed to get these out from the original ideas that were going from Jon Favreau. These included one with Luke, Grogu, and R2 that did really good. That's a proof of concept that was killed by Force's female. But the page has turned on Luke Skywalker, Lucasfilm said regarding current active media. Cameos and on-screen references to him are the best anyone can expect going forward. Nothing more. Don't ask. All the way from Kathleen Kennedy. And it tells who sourced this, and I won't read that. Again, this came from a meeting 2 years ago, and then it was further established 10 months ago in another meeting. One final note from the source in this regard says that the original trilogy characters are stuck in the past, good for stunt cameos and for legitimizing new characters and stories. However, they various partners believe that if they become desperate enough, that Luke Skywalker can be used as a Hail Mary. So, following the success of The Mandalorian Season 2, that was Lucasfilm's position. They came out and said, you will get no Luke. And we're going to talk about, after we have this round of conversation, we'll talk about why and how that happened. But I found that shocking, and I found it shocking that the language used for Luke in that meeting was cobwebbed. Guys, what do you think about Luke being cobwebbed? I'll tell you my thought real quick. My thought on this is it's like having all of the Batman universe at your disposal. You've got Gotham, you've got Robin, you've got the Joker, you've got everybody. And you're like, Batman's cobwebbed. You get no Batman. You're not making Batman toys. You're not making Batman movies. We don't do Batman anymore. He's too toxic.
No, he's a fascist.
Guys, that's right. What do you think of this idiocy that came out of Lucasfilm? And again, we're talking about sources that revealed the Rey movie. We're talking about sources that have been spot on what's going to happen with these shows. And this is what they're saying. We're talking about sources who have revealed big, big things in the past. I don't want to say too much more, but what do you make of this? Valiant went last. X-Wing is ready to go. We'll hold for X-Wing. Valiant, what do you think?
I was simply going to say right now, everybody that was watching the live show on Sunday evening on my channel just realized what our cobweb, spiderweb jokes were about. So
that's right. It's not Spider-Man.
Y'all go ahead. I have seen this. I hate to say that it's not terribly surprising at this point, given everything we have seen publicly.
And Valiant's seen a huge chunk of the original email.
Yeah, and I'll look, this is kind of where we are, but as Pro said, I will stress it again. This is a source that has been incredibly knowledgeable with a hell of a track record.
I just, they have to be allergic to money or something. Lucasfilm is not a profitable division of the Walt Disney Company, and nothing cures like sales. I mean, you could have the worst movie ever that everyone is ashamed to be a part of it, but if it made money, they would not care. They would say, please, let's do another one exactly like this.
Well, they're determined to do the High Republic, and they're determined to redeem the sequel trilogy. That much seems sure. Lauren, you've got a confused look on your face up there. What are you thinking up there, Lauren?
No, this isn't confusion. This is anger. Let me ask a clarifying question if I can.
Yes.
That mandate, did it say in this material you've received that this was a directive coming from Kathleen herself? Or was it vague on that point?
It is vague on well, if you're talking about the cobwebbed, it does not say that Kathleen Kennedy was in the meeting in which that was said. It simply says that high-level Lucasfilm executives were part of that with Hasbro and third-party consulting companies, talking about the forward strategy coming out of Season 2 and what they were going to do.
Use your imagination.
Right. The reason I'm asking that question is because during this time frame 2 years ago is when she was supposed to be refocusing her attention elsewhere on Children of Blood and Bone. And if in fact that is not the case, if this directive was coming from her, it means that she has always been directly involved with all of this stuff and operating more freely behind the scenes than we thought, which probably is not a surprise given what we've seen since then with Book of Boba Fett and everything else. However, it's kind of like I said on the last question. This is deliberate suicide. She's actively killing the studio, and it lends more weight to the quote that, again, I don't know if it's ever been attributed or confirmed, but there was the rumor that she had come out and said, I will either have my way or I will burn this nonsense to the ground. And that seems to be true. And also, if true, she may be a lousy creative. She may have daddy issues. She may hate men. But it does show that she is strategic, and she does know how to find the weak points to enforce her will. both with Gina Carano and with the merchandising. And the merchandising is where things really, really hurt. It's not the movies. It's the toys, it's the games, it's the novels, it's everything else. And if she can drive them away, that appears to be her goal. So I think the only thing that you can do at this point is, again, boycott the product if you don't like the direction that it's going. Don't buy anything. If you have to buy something, buy it on the secondary market. Peltz, Perlmutter, I hope you're listening. You need to get involved here.
Well, and Lauren, let's say this too. Who was brought in then to do the very quick get rid of Luke episodes for the Book of Boba Fett?
Rodriguez?
No. Dave Filoni.
Right. You're talking about the individual episodes, right?
Yeah.
And Lauren, real quick to something you said, because this is, and this cannot be overlooked or overstated. There needs to be a very clear delineation before we go any further, just so people understand what Pro said, and this is key. There is a difference between an existing piece of IP that's already out in the ether, like Mando and Grogu, where Favreau apparently has a lot of
control is what we
creative
understand.
Control versus new properties that have to get through Kennedy first. So the whole issue with, she was behind the scenes, she had more free will than we thought, as you stated, Lauren. You're correct to an extent in so much that there is with new content versus existing, and this is where the internal battle, as it seems.
And we're gonna get there in just a minute too.
Yeah. So everybody bear that in mind.
The irony of that, if that be true, though, is that honestly, the smarter solution for Favreau at that point would have been to take that dare. Now, the pressure from the merchandisers is probably what caused the problem. But if he had said, fine, we lose Grogu then, and I continue telling the story in Mando that moves things forward, I don't need these other shows. That would have been the smarter path to take.
Well, that would have been, but does that fit in with his personality? He seems to be the kind of person who does not make waves. He tries to get along. He tries to say the right thing. Coach.
Well, there's also the thought that at that point in time, Chapek was still in charge and he was looking to have a formal position within the company. So I think
that's exactly right too. And Lauren, you are on it, Coach.
We're getting there.
So this is a plan that started way before Mando season 2.
Yes.
If you go back to the beginning of the sequel trilogy, in the planning stages of the film, they had Luke Skywalker drawn or written on a whiteboard, X'd out.
Yeah.
They had no clue. J.J. Abrams wrote Luke Skywalker out of the film, The Force Awakens, because he didn't want to deal with the problem. It has been an absolute mess, and for people who are my generation in Star Wars fandom, Luke is our Superman. Luke is our Optimus Prime. Luke, for younger fans, is our Harry Potter. And it's incredibly insulting that they do this. And this is how you kill a franchise. There's absolutely no doubt about it, because that character is Star Wars, period. And I'll say this, Pro, my last comment, none of it is surprising to me.
Yes. Well, you know what is surprising to me? Well, maybe not surprising, but it's amazing that it happened, is that Favreau came in with an idea, and then all he needed to do was drop Luke in for a short cameo that took Baby Yoda Grogu away. And that was the whole thing, right? So, and we'll talk about this more in a moment, but the idea was you bring in the Mandalorian, you give him this magical mystery kid who's related, in the species of Yoda. And then you tease out that, hey, there may be something more with this, and maybe it'll make things better with the stuff that you guys hated. And then he fulfills that by bringing in Luke, and people go insane. YouTubers are crying. The ratings are through the roof. It's clear you have the character who will make you more money than you could possibly fathom. And Lucasfilm killed it. Like, it's not just like with the sequel trilogy where they said, we're not going to use Luke. We're not going to use Luke. We're not going to use Luke. And then they defended, we didn't use Luke. Here's why we didn't use Luke. Then they got Luke. Luke blew up the ratings, and they couldn't stand it.
Let me add one more point to that, too, that goes along with what you said. And I've never really heard anybody else talk about this. But if you go to Chapter 16, we all know that Mark Hamill was there and they used his face and all that stuff, but the actor that actually did all the work, all the scenes, he's a young actor named Max Lloyd Jones. He did incredible. He did incredible. He was the performer. They didn't use him in the Book of Boba Fett.
Right.
It was a completely different person, and it stands to reason that Luke that we look at in the Book of Boba Fett looks completely different than the one that we saw in Chapter 16. They're almost like two different people.
Why do you think that happened?
I don't know. It's just an interesting piece of evidence. You got something so big, and they don't even bring back the young actor.
They don't even respect it.
Who I know was willing to continue doing it. We had communication with Max Lloyd Jones.
I remember you telling me about that.
That is very, very interesting, and it stands to reason too, Pro. All of the things that happened within Lucasfilm to sabotage all the goodwill after Chapter 16.
Yes. X-Wing?
I got a quick question, if I could.
Sure.
I don't know if you would have heard anything about this, but Coach, you guys put up that video after Chapter 16 that basically said, Lucasfilm, the ball is now in your court.
Yeah.
Have you gotten any indication that they saw that as a personal tweak from the fandom? Instead of seeing it as something that was said in goodwill, did they take it as a challenge that they were insulted by?
The only thing I can tell you about that video is so funny because the beginning of the video, now you have our attention, Lucasfilm. Now you're getting it right. You got our attention. What are you going to do now? It was basically, it was a big thank you to Lucasfilm, but it was also what have you been doing these past few years? Now you're doing something. I know that, and they even talked about it in the documentary, The Making of The Mandalorian Season 2. Jon Favreau sent Mark Hamill our video, and he tweeted our video out. So ironic. The very video where I'm saying, Lucasfilm, now what are you going to do? And then it plays the tribute and all that.
And then clearly then Favreau and Mark Hamill were on board with this idea that we want Luke. The market wants Luke.
100%.
Well, we're not getting Luke, so that tells you who's really in charge over there. X-Wing, your thoughts?
Here's what I'll tell you. The time for being an angry, passionate fan has basically passed at this point. I'm apparently a relic of a bygone era. So instead, I have a business proposition for you, okay? I build lawnmowers. I've been building lawnmowers for 40 years. I've amassed untold billions of dollars creating the perfect lawnmower. Millions of people love my lawnmowers. But it's time
Mexican
for me to get
Iron
out of the
Man
game.
probably doesn't need to learn about this.
I have one of his lawnmowers.
This is just for Mike. So I decide I'm getting out of the lawnmower game. I want to give it to somebody who's been around the business for a long time, right? They've been around, they understand lawnmowers. They know what we're looking for. All right. So we hand off the company, sell it for $4 billion. And they go, you know what? We're getting into the ice cream game. We're going to sell ice cream. And anybody who likes lawnmowers, get out of here. We don't care about you anymore. Everything is about ice cream now. And when we
gasoline flavored and fresh cut lawn flavored ice cream. And
when we say that doesn't look like a lawnmower, that looks like ice cream. They say, get out of here. You're an ist. You're a phobe. You just don't understand lawnmowers. This ice cream.
It's our lawnmower now.
This is what we need. And the problem is nobody's buying the ice cream.
True that. So I reached out, and again, I've been reading from essentially two sources, trying to protect both of them. I reached out to a contact in and around Lucasfilm to see what they had to say about all of this stuff I was receiving. A huge part of it received earlier last week. And here's what this individual had to say, which, by the way, is far more than they usually send my way. It's usually very short. It says, I have to say your sources are on the money. A lot of us here are just hanging in. At one point, there was hope that Kathy would exit near term. I don't hope that anymore. Perhaps she's at the end of her rope. Maybe she's ready to leave, but she doesn't act like it. She acts like she's staying another 5 years, so who knows? Most of the people who worked with George are out, leaving, or keep to themselves to make it out alive. There was excitement around here a few years ago. When The Mandalorian started, which was then just a Favreau hop-in, every metric was off the charts. But it made Kennedy look very bad. It made the sequel trilogy look bad. She put Dave and Jon together. They worked well for those first seasons, but then things went sideways. The sequel trilogy backers were pissed that The Mandalorian had figured out how to unite the fan base. It beat all the narratives that were supposed to explain everything from inside Lucasfilm for what happened with Rise of Skywalker. Jon had the magic. There was no denying it. He created Din with the idea of combining Darth Vader and Han Solo personas and turning him into an anti-hero stuck with an innocent magic kid. That's the Samurai Squire story. It worked great, and Grogu took off with merchandise. But then the toxic side of Kathy's crew started looking for a way to put Lucasfilm proper back in control. Kareem Daniel, Valiant, I'll let you explain who that is in a moment. Kareem Daniel had protected Favreau so that his contract with creative control was ironclad. But Favreau didn't have anything written in to ensure green lighting of series. So when Gina Carano was taken out, and by the way, that may have been more than a culture war issue, that may have been about getting power of Lucasfilm, Favreau lost his Luke storyline with Rangers. They had to divert it to Boba Fett. Then Kennedy elevated Filoni and turned Favreau's MCU-style vision into a Clone Wars battle. Now Favreau is almost never on set with the productions. He'll probably continue to make his money, be the nice, non-confrontational exemplar that he is, but hope is gone. The magic sauce was Din combined with a mystery character that was supposed to be connected somehow to Luke, somehow to what happened with the sequels. Now it's just episodic cartoon serial stuff. The magic is gone, and all of it so Kennedy could hold on to power. So there you go. It seems to me that what this individual believes is that Gina Carano was targeted not necessarily because she had the wrong opinions, but because she was a convenient person to get rid of, because if she was the one who was gotten rid of, and it makes sense because you'll remember they set her up over and over where she would try to come up with, a way to appease them, to say, well, I don't hate people. And they would come up with crazy solutions that were just untenable. According to this source, Gina Carano was gotten rid of because that would get rid of Rangers, or the Ranger of the New Republic, and therefore it would kill the Luke Skywalker story, and therefore it would protect the sequel trilogy and keep Kathleen essentially in power. X-Wing, what do you make of this? And then we've got one more thing we're going to discuss afterwards, but what do you make of it?
I think this would be easily shot down by folks who think we're conspiracy theorists, right? This is easily one of those things where people would say, you're a tinfoil hat guy. That's just not how it happened. She made some stupid tweets and she got kicked out of the studio. I firmly believe that she was a linchpin in this expanded universe that they were creating, and her leaving legitimately destroyed any hope they had of taking that lawnmower and bringing it back into the frame and creating something that all of us, baseball hat white guys would have really loved, and they would have made untold amounts of money on.
I feel bad. Usually I'm wearing a baseball hat, but I'm not wearing one right now. I feel left out. Well, Coach?
Go get some ice cream.
What do I think about what?
Do you think, okay, so when Gina Carano was sent out the way she was,
yes,
is that what killed the Mandoverse?
It's definitely a huge part of it. There's this thing with Star Wars where every time something really, really good happens, it's immediately followed by something horrible.
How quickly did that happen after Luke's appearance, Coach?
Immediately. Pablo Hidalgo was tweeting saying that Star Wars theory shouldn't have emotions.
Yeah.
Right. Immediately, right?
Keep your emotions to yourself. Yeah, that was his reaction to that moment. The biggest Star Wars content creator in the world, who's almost bigger than Star Wars on YouTube. They have 4 million subscribers. He has 4 million subscribers. Like he's almost bigger than them. he had an emotional response, and somebody on the story group shamed him for it publicly. It was nasty. It was
That's
nasty.
so telling.
Yeah.
How quickly did it happen that Gina Carano was treated the way she was after the second season? Does anybody remember?
Weeks. It was weeks.
So does that not
6
say
weeks.
something to what's being said here? That perhaps Gina Carano was targeted not because she had the wrong opinions, but rather because she was the most convenient, because she's right-leaning, she's the most convenient person to take out. And if you do so, you take out Favreau's plan, which is now becoming more popular than everything you've done. And that stupid Feige. Now he's getting a movie over here at Lucasfilm too. That nobody trusts me anymore. You can hear Kathleen Kennedy's inner voice, right? I've got Favreau over here. I've got Feige over here. Everybody's getting credit. I'm going to take out Gina Carano. I'm just putting that out there as a thought. 6 weeks is a funny thing to only transpire.
Well, Pro, the Force is female. And as we've discussed for years, the biggest problem Gina Carano had was that she was more popular than Rey. And that was not the Force as female that Kathy had counted on.
Right. Real strong women aren't real loved over at Lucasfilm.
Yeah.
And that's not gut feeling, by the way. That's merchandise.
Oh,
If
yeah, absolutely. That was born out in merch.
Lauren?
Well, I got a bunch of thoughts. One is that I agree with X-Wing is that a lot of people will just dismiss this because it sounds like something that we would normally say. On that front, I think most of this we had already sort of sussed out already. We sort of figured this was sort of how things went down. I think it's good to have some confirmation of that. But I think that if you're asking about Gina, yeah, that was absolutely the thing that set off this entire series of falling dominoes that led to the point that we're at now.
But do you think that was done intentionally, knowing that Jon Favreau couldn't fix it?
Without question. I think that there is no doubt in my mind that was absolutely deliberate, but I think it was also personal. It's not just that Cara Dune was the Force's female character that actually worked. It's that she was a better feminist than Kathleen was. It's that she actually is a real strong woman with opinions who's beautiful and beloved and actually quite a nice person. She's not a and I think that's Kathleen couldn't stand that. I think that every day that Kathleen knew that Gina was on set, it was under her skin. I think it was like sand in her panties, and she decided that she was going to rub her nose in it.
This brings me joy.
I love Lorne tonight. This is God.
I'm telling you, that she is a vengeful, vindictive woman. There's only one thing that I think is cobwebbed at Lucasfilm, and I can't say it on this channel.
Damn.
All right. Well, let's talk about it. Here we go, guys. Last topic. This is not all that I have, but it's all that I feel comfortable putting out there and letting everybody discuss. We talked about this on the Valiant Renegade show. I do want to touch on it, though, because this gets into an explanation of what the industry partners view in terms of the big personalities at Lucasfilm and how to handle them. So here's what it says. Over at Lucasfilm, they are not talented enough to make something for everybody. It's like watching a car with square wheels going down the road. Cringe, boredom, repetitiveness, inconsistencies. Yeah, that makes for a bumpy ride. People are saying, please stop and let me out. Oh, and let's remember we want to be for everybody, even if that means chasing away men or quadrant balancing. I watched some recent Mandalorian, and here's what I can tell you. It has been revised and paneled to death. Do we have enough ships? Are there enough droids in this shot? Do we have enough creatures? We need more callbacks. There's not enough blaster fire. Oh, there's too much blaster fire. Is a woman firing that blaster? We can't have a kid do that. Do we have enough laughs? Are there enough hooks for social media interactions? If you've ever been in research and looked at the data, you'll know exactly what they're up to. Regarding Star Wars, I notice in your corner of YouTube that people see the output as divided into Kennedy, Filoni, Favreau, and then sometimes a joint Favreau-Filoni product. But nobody on the licensing side looks at it this way. Here's what they discuss around the table. Filoni is seen as a TV guy whose experience comes from animation. Clone Wars is generally a win, and that makes him the only internal current story guy at Lucasfilm with a positive track record. Isn't that crazy?
Let that sink in, guys.
Animation dialogue, however, can be really bad in live action. Also,
Obviously.
he is in love with his own creations, which can become a narrative problem impacting sales very quickly. He's a mini feminist, but he needs to be to survive and get promoted in his work environment. Favreau, on the other hand, is seen as a movie guy. He's got major partner credibility because of his contributions to early Marvel. He's an outsider, a hired gun, but he's not a TV writer. Serialized stories are, of course, very different from long-form movies. Once they screwed up his vision by killing Rangers and the Luke tie-in that was aimed for it, folks, this two sources, and it says that these products were seen because they had to be prepared in advance. Favreau is done. They threw the longer Luke story into Boba Fett and said, screw it. Nobody I know says he wants to stay forever doing episodic TV. That's a Filoni dream. Favreau is not seen as a savior at all. He's more of a hired gun who had some Star Wars stories to tell and whose track record at Disney opened the door to make it happen. A product manager who represents major money and a huge company described it this way when explaining how to handle these personalities. Kennedy is a raging feminist social justice warrior who has the final say. Filoni, who is a couple quarts low on testosterone, is in love with his own creations and can't get out of his own way when telling stories. Knowing Star Wars animation with its little cloistered universe, that doesn't mean that you can create a ramped-up movie or TV series, live action. And Favreau is the movie guy who is just passing through and shot everything on a couple of seasons of decent TV, lucked out with a merchandising darling in Baby Yoda. Because Star Wars has nothing else, Favreau's little show got latched onto, but then, after the fallout, was transplanted into being a live-action Filoni Clone Wars world. That's the That's the improvisation that happened. It's messy. I'm not going to say the next sentence because it identifies the source. It says, then one more source says this. Think of it like this. Favreau made something great. Filoni moved it in his direction. Kennedy kneecapped Favreau. Filoni made it his own. And that is your tone change. Gentlemen, one last round to discuss that. Coach, you haven't had a chance to go first. You're nodding. I know you've got some thoughts. Tell us what you think about that last part there. Filoni made it his own. What do you think about it?
I think that was the speculation all season for Mando season 3. That's what all of us, all of the fans who break it down and provide analysis, even like I already mentioned him, Star Wars Theory, like you could feel the difference in the seasons, and you could tell. You just had to speculate that Filoni is now a major contributor, where once I don't think that he was more of a partner. Now it's like he's getting his way, and it totally makes sense. The rumor now is that the season 4 that Favreau has written was actually going to be the Rangers of the New Republic story.
Yes, I've heard that rumor.
Yeah, that's what we're looking at now. So, and that is a shame.
And Coach, doesn't that feel like somebody who's totally defeated, who just says, you know what, I've already got all these scripts. We already did them here.
Well, it feels like that, and it also feels like somebody who, like you just mentioned, is not accustomed to episodic television going, I don't know what else to do.
Right.
It's called, I used to coach basketball for 20 years, and when something would go badly, we would say NBA, next best action. If that's what Favreau is doing, if he's given us the next best action by writing Rangers of the New Republic as his Mando season 4, it's still not what it should have been.
And if that was intended to be the Luke story and they can't use Luke, it means that the guts of those scripts had to be ripped out as well.
Yes. Filoni is sort of like the guy, you said you coached basketball, is that correct? Mm-hmm. Filoni's kind of like the guy who the next best action is always the Euro step. Do something crazy. Yeah. Here's the other thing about this too. So they've put the Mandalorian and Grogu back together now, and they're going to go on crazy zany adventures, right? This lines up with what the sources are saying, that Star Wars Lucasfilm recognize that they have a father-son problem. Like they're seeing the data too. And so it kind of explains why you would end in such a weird way. They reset the entire franchise. They've gone to full episodic stuff, but it's going to be Grogu and Din again, just going on more adventures. X-Wing, I mean, is this a way to win back? And let's separate ourselves out, okay? All of us here, we're big Star Wars fans. But is this a way to draw in the very, very casual crowd, the 8-year-olds, the 9-year-olds, because they just want to watch Saturday morning television, essentially, watch The Mandalorian and Grogu go save another planet every week?
So I'll answer that question, but my brain has been boiling for the past, 10 minutes, coming up with essentially what I'm feeling right now. But you don't sustain a nerd IP with casual fans. Bottom line.
Fully
That's
agree,
not
yes.
how nerd IPs work. So if you want to get casual fans and sell your ice cream, go ahead and try. But yeah, this is seppuku for Star Wars, if that's what you want to do. When it comes to Jon and Dave and this whole weird triangle that's going on with Kathleen Kennedy, a lot of people have said, if Kathleen Kennedy leaves, nothing changes. This is ingrained at Lucasfilm, yada, yada, yada. I understand that argument, but the bottom line is Dave Filoni is a goldfish. He will grow to whatever bowl you put him in. And I'm sick. I am sick of the argument that
Can we get Steven to make a goldfish with a little cowboy hat meme?
I am sick of the argument that because he got to study with George, he's the right guy for the job. Because you can take the most cowardly man in the world and put him with a master sergeant of the Marine Corps and he can train him, doesn't mean he can do the job when it comes down to it.
Right. You can't yes man your way completely up, right? At some point, you're going to get called out.
So that's how I'm feeling about Filoni. I think he has a place in Star Wars, and I think when he is given the opportunity to do what he's good at, he can do it very well. That doesn't mean he's the everyman for Star Wars. And he's proved that time and time again, that he's not the everyman for Star Wars. So I think it's really interesting that they're giving him a movie. On the other side of that, I think that Jon Favreau has the ability to do that. There was a big blow to my confidence when I saw Mandalorian season 3, but now with this news that we're seeing, maybe it wasn't just Jon Favreau, flipping the script. And I think that if I could turn back time, if I could find a way, Cher's playing in the back of my head right now. If you could stick Jon Favreau with George instead of Filoni and make him the executive, Star Wars would be in a much, much better place. Remove KK from the situation and give Favreau the ability to build the cinematic universe the way that he would want to do it. We would be happy and I would be broke.
Well, that's the amazing thing to me is that Lucasfilm could have more money than we can fathom, and they don't want it because all they have to do is go back to what made the Mandalorian seasons 1 and 2 so popular. You treat the source material well, you treat the legacy characters well, you give fans hope that it doesn't end with all of your characters dying from force exhaustion, constipation, whatever that is, or being murdered by your own children because you're a deadbeat dad, or becoming some sort of third-rate, fourth-rate character in terms of C-3PO and R2. Like, they don't even exist in the sequel trilogy. Give fans hope that that's not how their characters went out. Nobody wants Batman to die in a nursing home.
The only way you have to look at this, if you really want to know how Disney feels about Lucasfilm, how they feel about Star Wars, look at the parks. Just look at the parks.
Or the empty hotel. Valiant, you've got something on that. What do you say?
Well, now what X-Wing just said is a big reason behind all of this. It's not just a matter of, well, let's not do this. Let's not go out and make money right now. A lot of this boils back down to where we are in 2023 with the relationship and the investment between Disney and Lucasfilm. And that is where they're staring down the barrel of the old sunk cost fallacy. It's not just the $4 billion that they allocated in cash and stock to buy George Lucas's enterprises, right? It's the billions of dollars they have invested since then $2 billion plus, maybe $2.5 billion they have invested on those 5 films they put out between production and marketing, potentially more. And then you've got another couple of $1 billion that they've allocated towards building those parks X-Wing, which, as you recall, as we've all talked about many times, looked nothing like the original Imagineers had envisioned, right? It was supposed to be Hoth and Tatooine and Endor. And we got freaking
Star Wars?
Batuu. Yeah, Star Wars. we got great value brand Star Wars in these $2 billion theme parks. To this point, Batuu, after 5 films, has still not been a thing in Star Wars.
Oh, you're getting it in the Rey movie. Don't you worry. We're going to Batuu, baby.
Exactly. And you're going to get the Halcyon. You're going to get the Galactic Star Cruiser in that movie, too.
Oh, yeah.
Guaranteed. The point is that Disney could shift gears. They could go make a movie that's going to be a fan favorite, but then in their mind, and I just want to make that clear, in their mind, they then have to go back and spend however much they feel like they might have to spend. They've got to undo everything they've done in the parks and all this stuff. They've got to go back and they have to reskin this and do that and do the other thing. And it's not so much a matter of cost, right? And this goes down to the whole, like I said, sunk cost fallacy. It's an issue of Disney has to come out and do the thing that they hate doing, that they never do. And that's admit that they were wrong and they screwed up.
They got to do the BP oil thing, man. No corporation wants to do the BP oil thing.
We're sorry.
Sorry.
We're sorry.
Sorry.
They
So
refuse
sorry.
to do it. That's the bottom line. And that's always been the case with them.
Jonas,
The best time to plant a tree is yesterday. So just
Jonas,
get
I've
it
got
over
some
with.
hope. I've got some hope, and the reason I have hope is because they're allegedly making a Rey movie. And I can only imagine how badly that is going to suck, fail, and result in them having
Get
absolutely
the Acolyte
no
next
way.
year, too. Don't forget that.
Yes, no way but to say, we're sorry. We're so sorry. So,
Yeah.
Jonas, are we getting a we're sorry after the Rey movie, do you think? Are
They
we
don't-
finally going to reach that point? Or maybe
No.
even after Indy. Maybe Indy will not do well, and we'll finally get the we're sorry.
No, and here's what I have to say on this. Whoever watches these movies that is at Disney or Lucasfilm or whatever, if you want to sneak one little thing in here and say, hey, Bob Iger, can you get on the idea that maybe one of your silo heads here over at Lucasfilm is actively campaigning against making money? You know, all that sweet Lucasfilm merchandise that George Lucas paid all those bills with, bought all those islands, whatever he did with all that money, because
Got him
we
a
all
ranch.
know that the actual thing that makes money with Star Wars is the merchandising. We know you don't make that much money on movies. You make money on all of the other things you sell around it. If you got to make a Luke Skywalker story on Batuu, whatever, do it. Do a rotating schedule at the parks. Is it a Batuu day? Is it a sequel trilogy day? Is it
Anakin
an
and
Orilla
Thrawn
trilogy?
already exist in Batuu, by the way. If you haven't read the book, Thrawn Alliances, Anakin and Thrawn are both on that, literally in Blackspire Outpost in a book.
You can literally fix this today by hiring cosplayers. All of the costumes are there out in the wild. Hire the 501st and
Call
tell
the
them what they're not only
501st. Yes.
tell them what not to say in the parks and just send them out there. And you have got the most exciting thing that's happened at a Disney park in a very long time. I do not understand how a company that is laying off 7,000 people or more, likely more than that, can say, no, we are not going to put Luke Skywalker in something just so we can keep people in their jobs. Just so I don't understand the difference that you could make by just doing you don't even have to make a long story. Just do a Luke Skywalker story. You have the life rights to Mark Hamill's face at the perfect moment. Just do
And
it.
voice.
And voice. It is unconscionable, and it is a moral crisis that you need to just get over. Make some money and stop firing so many people. The money is in the market. Universal is doing gangbusters, and you are ignoring your financial responsibility to your shareholders and your employees. Just do it.
Do it.
Pro, can I give one more point?
You sure can.
that goes right with the evidence that you just gave us. You know, this whole movement about removing Luke Skywalker. As a fan, I kind of compartmentalize my Luke Skywalker. Like there's the Return of the Jedi era Luke Skywalker, the one that we got in The Mandalorian.
Right.
But if you think, in here lately, think about a series that the main star of the show said, "Oh yeah, this show was originally going to be about me and Luke," but then they changed their minds. That's straight out of the mouth.
I had not thought of that. Will you tell the audience who that is?
Yeah, straight out of the mouth of Ewan McGregor. Deborah Chow had written the story to be Obi-Wan and Luke. We weren't going to get a young Princess Leia in that show. It was going to be about Luke. And
I had not thought of that. You're right.
Stands to reason. They removed him from that show.
Because it would make too much sense.
I think there's enough specificity
You making
in what
me
we've
cry.
said. And we're being very careful with the sources to make sure that they don't, nothing can happen to them. But I think the folks at Lucasfilm, if they watch this video and they hear 2 years ago and 11 months ago, they're going to know, well, darn it. How about that? He's got something. But Lauren, I want to end on a positive note. I'm watching Mario doing absolutely gangbusters. I'm watching a bunch of companies figuring out how to make movies that do well. I'm thinking of Top Gun Maverick. I'm thinking about Avatar: The Way of Water. I'm thinking about Sonic the Hedgehog. And we can go on and on. There's going to be a day when Kathleen Kennedy will not be in charge of Lucasfilm anymore. And there has to be a day at some point where somebody competent takes over. I don't know if it's her successor. I don't know if it takes 10 years. But somebody at some point, the market says that somebody has to take it over that can do well with it, or it just becomes nothing. And given that it owns prime real estate at Disneyland and is a major part of the Disney Plus column, I would think that somebody has to take it over at some point that can do something. Lauren, what would you advise for them to do, somebody, when Kathleen Kennedy leaves, to begin to heal what has been done?
That's a deep question. I think I'm past the point of thinking that getting rid of Kathleen solves the problem.
Yes,
if you want to solve this problem, you have to get rid of Iger. You have to embarrass Iger. Iger cares about his legacy, and that's the only thing that he cares about. I think you have to have shareholders start to get very vocal about exactly what's happening under his leadership so that his legacy is in jeopardy. So let's start with Iger. Assuming that there is enough pressure put upon him that his legacy is in jeopardy, and let's say that we're somehow able to clear out these idiots that are in charge of this, no matter who is there. I think part of the reason I'm so enraged by this is that the Disney story is usually the princess story. And that's one of the reasons that Disney was interested in buying Star Wars, is they wanted to appeal to the male market. And the secret sauce of Star Wars, it's not the space battles, it's not the lightsabers, it's not Wookiees, it's not blasters, it's not any of that stuff. It's the father-son story. Men are raised in such a way that a lot of times they're putting on a stony face. You're not supposed to show your emotions. Where people get that is in that father-son story. There's a bond between fathers and sons that's no different than the bond that a mother has with her daughter. And it is every bit as strong and powerful as that relationship is usually portrayed. Treating this story this way is not just disrespectful to art. It's deliberately trying to harm that kind of a father-son relationship. They're treating this as though there are no positive male role models. They're all incompetent or corrupt or otherwise worthy of nothing but disparagement.
Well, they made Lando Calrissian interested in robots, so I'm going along with you so far on this.
This is only serving to demoralize people. And I think that if you're going to try and fix this somehow, not only do you have to repair what they've done, but you have to make the core of that story something that is positive, uplifting. It doesn't have to be father-son necessarily. I think that you can tell stories that are mothers and daughters in Star Wars. I think that my personal belief all this time about Cara Dune was they were going to set her up as a new princess of the Alderaanian remnant. She was going to be the Disney princess.
Would have been so cool.
And what kind of an interesting take on Disney princess would that be? Not only is she a princess of the remnant of Alderaan, but she's also a badass who carries a big gun. I mean,
I love it.
What more do you want? You want the roadmap? Just talk to anybody who's interested in telling uplifting stories of families that overcome adversity. Stop with this lecturing nonsense.
Agreed on all points. Gentlemen, are all hearts and minds clear at the end of this video? Anybody got one last thing they want to say?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Do you have the ability to beep some cuss words?
Well, I do, yes. Go for it,
Okay.
X-Wing.
Yeah, I'm going to. So, this is for you, Disney, from a longtime fan. A longtime fan. You are reaping nothing but what you and what you are seeing now is the chickens coming home to roost. I don't care how much you lied and tried to tell us that we are the ones who are wrong. We don't understand Star Wars. This is what you get. This is what you get.
This is what you get. This
You
is not the way.
You could have filled your pockets with gold coins, and instead you filled our ears with sweet nothings. You're liars, and this is what you deserve.
Folks, this is not the way. This is not the way you run Star Wars.
Oh, you stole my line.
Aha! But if you want to see how to do something successfully, go look at Mario. It's going to potentially be the biggest revenue earner of all feature-length animated films of all time, yet again taking another crown from Disney, and they just did it by telling a lovely story about brotherly love that everyone can enjoy and that honors and cherishes the source material. Star Wars, try to do that. Kathleen Kennedy, it's time to head out. Luke Skywalker will never be cobwebbed. Luke Skywalker will never be a museum piece any more than Superman, Batman, or any of the other major iconic characters who became heroes to so many. They are the heroes of their franchises. They are the ones that the stories revolve around. Folks, this was a long one, but I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you had a good time, even though it's not necessarily fun to hear about what Lucasfilm has been up to, but we'd all rather know the truth than sit around and think otherwise. If you like content like this, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe, and you can stick it to the algorithms. When you click it, we're talking about that notification bell. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, and even when they make it so hard, even when they take your toys and run them through the mud, even when they tell you that your heroes are not allowed to be played with anymore, you tell them no, and you keep having fun.